يحيى خذ الكتاب بقوة وآتيناه الحكم صبيا إذ قال الله يا عيسى إني متوفيك ورافعك إلي محمد رسول الله.
السلام عليكم ورحمة الله. إن الحمد لله نحمده ونستعينه ونستغفره ونعوذ بالله من شرور أنفسنا ومن سيئات أعمالنا. من يهده الله فلا مضل له ومن يضلل فلا هادي له. وأشهد أن لا إله إلا الله وحده لا شريك له وأشهد أن محمدا عبده ورسوله. اللهم صل وسلم وبارك عليه وعلى آله وصحبه وسلم. We are in Surah Al-Anfal, and this beautiful surah, Surah Al-Anfal, and after it, Surah At-Tawbah. It's unique in its subject. It's basically describing the life of the Prophet ﷺ in Al-Medina, facing all kinds of challenges, the hypocrites, the enemies of the deen of Al-Islam, when they came all the way from Mecca to fight against the Prophet ﷺ, and how Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala gave victory to the Prophet ﷺ and the companions radiallahu anhum, that how they sacrificed in their life with their own selves and their wealth, all for the sake of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, to make the words of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala superior. And they were patient and they struggled for the sake of Allah, and the outcome was definitely the best for the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam. And it shows the ways of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala on earth, as it's been mentioned also in the previous surahs like Surah Al-A'raf, and how the prophets of Allah, they go through struggle, and at the end the outcome and the victory and the success is only for the believers, and the disbelievers, they are ruined and they destroyed by the power of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala if they continue to oppose the truth and to fight against the orders of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. We're still in the beginning of the surah, and the surah was revealed after the battle of Badr, and this was one of the major battles that the Prophet ﷺ fought, and one of the very early ones, one of the first major one after the Prophet ﷺ migrated to Al-Madinah. And it was such an incident, such a battle, that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala gave victory to the Prophet ﷺ and the companions radiallahu anhum from where they did not expect whatsoever. They were so much outnumbered by the disbelievers, and they were not even intended to fight or to be in such a state where fighting the disbelievers. But Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, He willed for the matter to be there, and the will of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala overpowers everything. And that's also what is mentioned in the surah, as we will hear inshallah ta'ala. So after the beginning of the surah that talks about the Anfal and the spoils of the war, and the arguments that happened among the companions radiallahu anhum, how to deal with it, and after making the matters very clear for them, and then Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala mentioned the characteristics of the believers, that the believers are not the ones, those who are going after the materialistic gain of this life, but they're rather the people that believes in Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, and they have the remembrance of Allah, and they establish the salah and so on. We talked about the characteristics of the believers as it's mentioned in the beginning of the surah, which is the foundation to all what comes afterwards. These are the ones that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala will give them victory and success in this life and in the hereafter. These are the believers, those who Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala will give them the steadfastness. And that's why everything in the surah based on the fact that these are the believers, those who were with the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam. Inshallah ta'ala will go through verses number 5 to number 8. Number 5 to number 8 from the surah. And it talks about the battle of Badr. The battle of Badr. And some of the lessons, of course, learned, because Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, whenever He reveals the Quran to the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam, if it talks about an incident happened or something of it happened in the past, it's not about history, or it's not about just narrating a story for people to enjoy it, but rather the purpose of it is for people to benefit and to show the power of Allah and the ways of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, and to extract from it the benefits that people will be in need of it till the Day of Judgment. And that's why studying the seerah, the life of the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam, is very important for every Muslim. Because when we study the seerah, the way the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam is life, we're basically seeing the Quran. We're seeing the way of the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam, the implementation of the wahy, the revelation from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, and to see the ways of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala on earth. So this is basically what the verses are talking about it. We won't be able to finish it in this episode, inshallah ta'ala. We'll continue it next time, inshallah ta'ala. But to get to understand the meanings of the verses and the benefits to be taught from that, inshallah ta'ala. So let's start with verse number 5 in Surah Al-Anfal. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says to the Prophet sallallahu alayhi wasallam and to the companions radiallahu anhum, كما أخرجك ربك من بيتك بالحق وإن فريقا من المؤمنين لكارهون. Which means, it is just as when your Lord brought you out of your home for the battle of Badr in truth, while indeed a party among the believers were unwilling. This verse talks about the battle of Badr. And as we heard, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is the one that brought out the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam and the companions radiallahu anhum from their homes for this battle, bil-haqq, by the truth. The verse doesn't explicitly says the battle of Badr, but that's what the verses were revealed for. And that's the importance of knowing the asbab al-nuzul, or the reason why these verses were revealed. And that's why when we see the translation, it's the translation of the meanings, the translation of the tafsir of the verses. So, كَمَا أَخْرَجَكَ, as you see in the translation, it is just as when your Lord brought you out of your home, or as Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is mentioning something the like of it. And the ulama talked about this, what is basically is being mentioned in this verse that is similar to this, like a similar thing to the fact that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala brought you out from your home to fight the battle of Badr. It's the same thing basically as some of the ulama when they mentioned with what's mentioned in the beginning of the surah, the same way that they argued with the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam about the spoils of the war, and the same way that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala described about the believers and how they have these great qualities that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala mentioned. The same way Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala brought out the Prophet sallallahu alayhi wasallam by the truth. This is part of being a believer. This is part of the decree of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And who is the one that brought out the Prophet sallallahu alayhi wasallam for this? It is Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. كَمَا أَخْرَجَكَ رَبُّكَ مِن بَيْتِكَ بِالْحَقِّ. Your Lord is the one that brought you out min baytik, from your home, bil-haqq, by the truth, or in truth. Because when a person goes out of his house, either he's going to go out to do what is right or to go out to do what is evil. And the Prophet ﷺ, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala guided him that all of his moves and everything is for the sake of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, and Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala made him as an example and a role model for all humanity. So this basically is talking about the Battle of Badr. The Battle of Badr, where the Prophet ﷺ, when they went, he and the companions radiallahu anhum, they went to intercept one of the caravans of Abu Sufyan from the people of Quraysh, and they did not intend to fight a battle with them. And when the disbelievers, they get to know about this, they sent for aid from the people of Quraysh in Mecca. And they came with 1,000 or more of their, well-equipped soldiers and so on to fight against the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam. The Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam went out with 300 and over 10, so 300 and something of the companions radiallahu anhum, and not that it's something that the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam was trying to get the people in Medina to go out and fight for the sake of Allah. They were just going for that small expedition, and Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala willed for the matter to be a major battle. And that's what is basically is being said here. And how Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, His decree, and He ordained for the people to do something that is against their will. They just wanted to go after the caravan of Abu Sufyan, that he was with it, but Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala willed for it to be a major battle between the believers and the disbelievers, for the words of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to be superior, and for the establishment of the deen of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala among the believers, and among also to bring the fear in the hearts of the disbelievers that would lead to the establishment of the believers. كَمَا أَخْرَجَكَ رَبُّكَ مِن بَيْتِكَ بِالْحَقِّ. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is the one that brought him out. وَإِنَّ فَرِيقًا مِّنَ الْمُؤْمِنِينَ لَكَارِهُونَ. And a group of the believers, they were unwilling. They were karihun, that means they're disliking it. Disliking the fact that they would go, for example, fight. But rather they just wanted to go after the caravan of Abu Sufyan. But Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala willed for them to fight against the battle, against the disbelievers. وَإِنَّ فَرِيقًا مِّنَ الْمُؤْمِنِينَ لَكَارِهُونَ. It's a normal thing for them. If they had the choice whether just to intercept the caravan of the Abu Sufyan, and of course the disbelievers, they took the wealth of the believers when they migrated from Mecca, and they took their possessions and so on. So they just wanted to take the easy way. But Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala willed for them to make it something for the sake of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, to fight for the sake of Allah, and to give them victory. So this was the situations of the believers, that a group of them, they were unwilling to go and to be in such a state. And that's why the next verse Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, يجادلونك في الحق بعدما تبين كأنما يساقون إلى الموت وهم ينظرون, which means arguing with you concerning the truth after it had become clear, as if they were being driven towards death while they were looking on. Some said that this was referring to the disbelievers, they arguing with the Prophet ﷺ concerning the truth, as if they are being driven towards death while they were looking on. And some said, and that's what Ibn Kathir and others, they said what is more correct is that it's referring to the believers. Those who argued, a group of the believers, they argued with regards to this, because they were arguing against going out to fight. And the same thing with the arguing in the beginning of the surah about the Anfal, about the spoils of the war. And Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, He is raising basically the companions of the Prophet ﷺ to be the best generation ever brought to mankind. So that's why the Quran was revealed at that time, to correct their actions and to purify them one step after another. So when they argued with the Prophet ﷺ with regards to matters that are clear, because it's haqq, it's the truth, it's the revelation from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, after the matter has been made clear to them, كأنما يساقون الموت وهم ينظرون, as if they were driven to death while they are looking on to the battle and so on. And Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, He mentioned afterwards that He promised them that He would give them the one of two, whether is to fight against the disbelievers and to win the battle and to make them victorious and to have the deen of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala and the words of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to be superior, or they would just get the booty of the expedition of intercepting the caravan of Abu Sufyan from the people of Quraysh. And that's why the promise of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is the truth, and the people intended one thing and the will of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala was something else. And that's as Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala mentioned in the Quran, and we talked about that before, that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala said كُتِبَ عَلَيْكُمُ الْقِتَالُ وَهُوَ كُرْهٌ لَكُمْ وَعَسَىٰ أَن تَكْرَهُوا شَيْئًا وهو خير لكم وعسى أن تحبوا شيئا وهو شر لكم والله يعلم وأنتم لا تعلمون, that ordained upon you al-qital, fighting for the sake of Allah. And then Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala said maybe that you would hate something and it's good for you, and maybe that you would like something and it's evil and bad for you, and Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala knows and you do not know. So imagine that this is the case, and many things in life is like this. Maybe you would like something and you desire something, but it's bad for you. And maybe that you would hate something and it's good for you. So how can a person know? Because it becomes then very confusing. The ayah ends with, وَاللَّهُ يَعْلَمُ وَأَنْتُمْ لَا تَعْلَمُونَ. Allah knows and you do not know. So therefore, putting forward what Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala ordained upon the believers, being obedient to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, having the concern to be obedient to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, that what is the job of the believers. And Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala will give them victory and aid them in steadfastness as a result of that. And one of which is what Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala made it clear for the believers in the battle of Badr. We'll continue inshallah ta'ala with these verses and what happened in the battle with the words of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala in Surah Al-Anfal after the break. So stay with us inshallah.
محمد رسول الله محمد رسول الله.
Alhamdulillah, salatu wassalamu ala Rasulullah. Welcome back, and we are with verses from 5 to number 8 from Surah Al-Anfal, and with the battle of Badr, and the verses that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala revealed to the Prophet alayhi salatu wasalam with regards to this battle, and how that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, when He revealed to the Prophet alayhi salatu wasalam that a group of the believers, they were unwilling to go out with the Prophet sallallahu alayhi wasallam, and Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala intended for them for them to happen what is opposite to their desire, and that is to meet their enemies and to fight their enemies. They did not intend for that to happen, but this is by the decree of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And they would argue because they went out for intercepting the caravan of the people of Quraysh. But then when it escaped them, as the news came to them that the Prophet ﷺ is going out for them, so they took another route, and the Prophet ﷺ and his companions, they basically missed them. But then the people of Quraysh, they came out, when they were sought help from the caravan first, and then after that they sent to them and they said, we escaped, that means we're safe and so on. But the people of Quraysh, they said, no, we will continue to go and establish ourselves in the place of Badr, so that the Arabs will see that we defeated. Basically, they wanted to defeat the Prophet ﷺ, and they brought their families with them and their animals and the cattle, and for them to slaughter it and to make a festivity, basically thinking that it's an easy win against the Prophet ﷺ, and for the establishment of the people of Quraysh and the disbelievers to be well known, and the Arabs will fear them and respect them and so on. So they took it upon themselves, this egos and the arrogance that drives people to their own destruction. So they refused to go back. They said, that's it, we set ourselves out, so we will establish and we will fight the battle. And they were 1,000 or more. Some said 900 and something. Some said that it was over 1,000. And the Prophet ﷺ and his companions were only 310, 320, something in that range. And this was a miraculous thing. And a group of the believers, they said to the Prophet ﷺ, if we know that we were going out to fight for the sake of Allah, we would have prepared ourselves differently. But now the matter is completely changed. So this is basically what the previous verse was talking about يُجَادِلُونَكَ فِي الْحَقِّ. They're arguing with you in the truth. بَعْدَمَا تَبَيَّنَ. After it's been made clear. كَأَنَّمَا يُسَاقُونَ إِلَى الْمَوْتِ وَهُمْ يَنْظُرُونَ. As if they were being dragged or driven towards death while they were looking on. And again, as we said, this is how Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, His way and His decree does not go according to the people and what they desire. And it's amazing how the qadr of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala and the decree of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is in such a way that it's not according to the desires of the human beings. So that's why people might think that they have a plan, or they have a good plan for things, even if it's for the sake of Allah, for matters of deen. If people, for example, they would think that the way for the deen to be established, for the people to be upon what is right, is to do this and this and that. Of course, if it's a wahy revelation from Allah, there's no doubt that this is the truth and this is where the people they need to follow. But when it comes to worldly preparations and taking means and so on, but then Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala teach the believers that yes, you take the means and you should take the permissible means in your full capacity, following the orders of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, and leave the end and leave the results to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, because everything is by the decree of Allah. And definitely the decree of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is what is best for the believers. So this is basically one of the major lessons to be learned from this, and how Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala made the matter in such a way that people were amazed how Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala gave victory to the believers. As we would see, even the angels, they came down to help the believers. Then the next verse, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, which is verse number 7, وَإِذْ يَعِدُكُمُ اللَّهُ إِحْدَى الطَّائِفَتَيْنِ أَنَّهَا لَكُمْ وَتَوَدُّونَ أَنَّ غَيْرَ ذَاتِ الشَّوْكَةِ تَكُونُ لَكُمْ وَيُرِيدُ اللَّهُ أَن يُحِقَّ الْحَقَّ بِكَلِمَاتِهِ وَيَقْطَعَ دَابِرَ الْكَافِرِينَ. Which means, remember, O believers, when Allah promised you one of the two groups, that it would be yours, and you wish that the unarmed one would be yours. But Allah intended to establish the truth by His words and to eliminate the disbelievers. And it will be continued. So, وَإِذْ يَعِدُكُمُ اللَّهُ إِحْدَى الطَّائِفَتَيْنِ. When Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala promised you one of the two groups. What are the two groups? One group is the unarmed ones, the caravan, of the people of Quraysh. And they're not armed, and the matter is easy, and the companions are only 300. The other group is basically the army that came out to help them and to aid them, and they were the 1,000 people or so, and they're well equipped and so on. So Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala promised them one of the two. whether to get the unarmed caravan or they would be victorious over the disbelievers in their army, their mighty army they came out to fight against the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam. So this is the promise of Allah. وَإِذْ يَعِدُكُمُ اللَّهُ. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala promised His Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam, and it's mentioned in the Quran in more than one place. And the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam, when this was revealed to him, he went out to the people and he said, سَيُهْزَمُ الْجَمْعُ وَيُوَلُّونَ الدُّبُرَ, that the people, those who are gathered against us to fight against us, they will be defeated and they would show their backs. That means they would flee away from the battlefield, even though they are triple or more, when it comes to the size and the power that they have and the equipment and so on. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala defeated them, as it also will be mentioned clearly in the next verses and so on. So Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala gave victory to the Prophet alayhi salatu wasalam, and they were given, the believers, they were given the promise from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. But this happened after they showed their humbleness to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. The Prophet ﷺ kept the entire night making dua to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala and praying to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala and invoking Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And the companions of the Prophet ﷺ, they saw that concern to the Prophet ﷺ, and they said to the Prophet ﷺ, Allah's promise is the truth, and of course Allah's promise is the truth. But the way to achieve this is to worship Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, is to make dua to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, and the power of the dua and the obedience to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So وَإِذْ يَعِدُكُمُ اللَّهُ إِحْدَى الطَّائِفَتَيْنِ. He promised them one or two, one or the other. أَنَّهَا لَكُمْ, that it will be for you. But then وَتَوَدُّونَ أَنَّ غَيْرَ ذَاتِ الشَّوْكَةِ تَكُونُ لَكُمْ. وَتَوَدُّونَ, and you would love and you would wish. And tawadduna from al-mawadda, that means when you wish for something, when you love something, and you take in all the means to achieve it. So it's not just like a wishful thinking, but you would really take the means to achieve what you are desiring. So the first part of the verse talks about the promise of Allah, that one or the other will be yours. But then the desire of the people, وَتَوَدُّونَ, this is their desire, أَنَّ غَيْرَ ذَاتِ الشَّوْكَةِ, that other than the armed one, which basically you wish that the unarmed one would be yours. So not the armed one, not the army that came out against you. Why? It's a normal thing for the human beings. They want the easier one. And, it's usually something that is fearful if they would have to meet an army, especially that it's 3 times more than their own army. So وَتَوَدُّونَ, and you would love or you would wish, أَنَّ غَيْرَ ذَاتِ الشَّوْكَةِ, then other than the ones that are armed and strong, تَكُونُ لَكُمْ, that it will be for you or that it will be yours, that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala will give you that without having to go through a fight or anything. But then Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, وَيُرِيدُ اللَّهُ أَن يُحِقَّ الْحَقَّ بِكَلِمَاتِهِ. Why? What Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala decreed happened, that they would fight against the disbelievers, and it becomes a war, and the believers are so much less in number and the disbelievers are far more in number. And all of that, at the end, the Prophet ﷺ and the companions radiallahu anhum, they were victorious. All of that because people, again, they do not know the way of Allah till it happens. So Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, وَيُرِيدُ اللَّهُ أَن يُحِقَّ الْحَقِّ, that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala intended to establish the truth. وَيُرِيدُ اللَّهُ, Allah's will. Nobody can oppose it whatsoever. So they wanted the unarmed one, they wanted the easier one, but Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala wants something else. وَيُرِيدُ اللَّهُ أن يحق الحق بكلماته, that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala intend to establish the truth by His words. أن يحق الحق, al-haq is the truth, and yuhaq is the verb of it, to establish the truth. And that's why it's the same word, but it's just one is a verb and one is a noun. So to establish the truth, to make the truth, right? Because the truth is one thing, but to establish it, this is another thing. The truth would never change. The truth would never disappear. The truth is always going to be present. But to establish the truth in the lives of the people, this needs another set of efforts. And that's why one of the dua of the Prophet ﷺ used to say, Allahumma arina al-haqqa haqqan warzuqna ittiba'ah. Oh Allah, make us among those who see the truth and make us follow the truth. And make us see the falsehood and make us avoid the falsehood, which is another thing. To have the power of knowing the truth, that's a great favor from Allah, to know the truth. Many people, they do not know the truth to start with. But then, knowing the truth is not sufficient unless you follow the truth. So that's why the human beings, they are in need of two forms of power: the power of knowledge, the power of knowing the truth, and the power of establishing that truth in one's life and others and so on. And both are powers that are needed. And that's why the knowledge and actions, and that's why it's the constant life of the believers to get to know the truth and to seek help from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to be upon the truth and to continue to be upon the truth till the last moment of one's life. And Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, His way on earth is in such a way that the truth will be made very clear for the people. Whether people would follow it or not, this is something for them. But Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala made the truth very clear. That's why the final revelation from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has the ultimate truth. And truth is made very clear. And even the ways of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala on earth and the struggle that the believers go through in life, the matter is made very clear for them. وَيُرِيدُ اللَّهُ أَن يُحِقَّ الْحَقَّ بِكَلِمَاتِهِ, by the words of Allah. And the words of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is for something to happen, and it happens. All by the words of Allah. And if Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala will, He would make the believers victorious from the first instant. وَلَوْ شَاءَ اللَّهُ لَانْتَصَرَ مِنْهُمْ. If Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala will, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala will make you victorious. But why then this is the case? So that He would test you with regards to your enemies, to elevate the believers, to choose from them martyrs, to make the disbelievers, those who are arrogant and they reject the truth, to be more indulged into the disbelief and sins, for the punishment of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to be upon them with clear evidence that there is no doubt whatsoever that they deserve it. So وَيُرِيدُ اللَّهُ أَن يُحِقَّ الْحَقَّ بِكَلِمَاتِهِ. And the kalimat of Allah, the words of Allah, are of two types. There is the universal words of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, which is for the matter to happen, to be, and it becomes. Kun fayakun. And there is the religious words of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, which is the wahy, the revelation from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And both are the truth. So even if Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala decreed something that is against the desire of the believers, that's by the truth, for the truth to be established. And for people, for example, if they're tested or they are given these means for them to worship Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala in a different way, they obey the orders of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So وَيُرِيدُ اللَّهُ أَن يُحِقَّ الْحَقَّ بِكَلِمَاتِهِ. By the words of Allah, the truth becomes clear. Whether it's the universal decree of Allah, as it happened in the Battle of Badr, the truth was well established. And from right after the victory of the Prophet ﷺ and his companions against the disbelievers, now the Arabs, they get to know, and the people around Quraysh, they get to know the power of the Prophet ﷺ. And this is all means for the establishment of the words of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, for people to listen to the truth, for people to listen to the message of the Prophet ﷺ, and to be invited to the deen of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So this is all by the words of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala and the decree of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. That's the wisdom behind that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala decreed for them to fight against the disbelievers and not to just make it an unarmed expedition. وَيَقْطَعَ دَابِرَ الْكَافِرِينَ. And to eliminate the disbelievers and to stop their aggression and their evilness. And as we know that these disbelievers, when they came, their intentions were that they would not just fight a battle and they go home. Their intentions were to wipe out the believers altogether. This is the level of arrogance that they were upon, and that's why they would never be pleased with the believers, and this is their goal. And they would never be satisfied with one thing unless they make the believers disbelievers, or they want to eliminate them completely. And that's what Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, then He said, وَيَقْطَعَ دَابِرَ الْكَافِرِينَ. Then Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala will eliminate the traces of the disbelievers when it comes to those who oppose the truth, if the believers, they are upon what Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala wants from them. We continue inshallah ta'ala and the last verse after the break, so stay with us inshallah.
محمد رسول الله محمد رسول الله.
Alhamdulillah, wassalatu wassalamu ala Rasulillah. Welcome back, and with verses number 5 to number 8 from Surah Al-Anfal. And we were just talking about the verse number 7, the promise of Allah, and the truth that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala intend for it to be established. And nobody can oppose the will of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, and iradatullah, the will of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Human beings, they can have whatever wills they have, And at the end, the will of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala overpowers everyone. And that's why to believe in the decree of Allah, in the destiny, to take the means, to always intend what Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala wants from the believers. And that is to be known by the revelation from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And how Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala tested the believers at the time of the Prophet ﷺ when He gave them the promise that they would either take the unarmed caravan of the people of Quraysh or they would fight a war against them. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala willed for them to fight. Even the group of the believers, they just wanted the easy one. But Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala willed for them to go through the struggle and to turn to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala alone, as it will be mentioned in the next verses, how they would turn sincerely to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala because there's no means. They took all the means, the physical means, and with the physical means only, there's no way they will be victorious against their enemies. There are 300 and something versus 900 to 1,000. And there's no comparison whatsoever. And the arrogance of the disbelievers is in such a way. So when it comes to the physical means, there's no comparability here. And that's why when this was the case, and they were basically ordered to go that route, that means this is from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, therefore they turn to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala sincerely. And you have to link this to what's mentioned previously about the characteristics of the believers. These are the ones that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala give them steadfastness. Those who they are in remembrance of Allah. And the verses of the Quran increases their iman. And they rely on Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. They have the fear of Allah. They rely on Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. They establish the salah. They spend from what Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala provide for them. These are the true believers. And that's why even when, from the previous session when we talked about أُولَٰئِكَ هُمُ الْمُؤْمِنُونَ حَقًّا, these are the true believers. حَقًّا is mentioned, and now the haqq is mentioned. That Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala wants to establish the haqq, the truth. So the people, they have to be upon the haqq, upon the truth, for the truth to be established by them. And if Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala will, nobody can oppose the will of Allah. And if the people of the truth, they turn away from the truth, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala still will establish the truth. How is that? He would replace them. He would replace them by others, those who would be believers, and they would be upon the truth, for Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to establish the truth by them. So no matter what people do, the truth will be established. And if there's times where the people or the believers are weak or whatever, this is all temporary, and for the believers they would be victorious. But if they turn away from the truth, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala will either guide them to the truth, or He would replace them by those who would hold fast to the truth. And as we heard, that this is by the decree of Allah and by the revelation from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And the disbelievers were defeated. The people of Quraysh were defeated. And they, all of their arrogant statements and so on, they would be in vain. And one of them is Abu Jahl. He's the one that was enticing all of this. He was killed in the battle in the worst humiliated way by two of the young children, or the young adults among the Prophet army, and all by the will of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, all by the power of Allah. Then the last verse for this episode, inshallah ta'ala, which is verse number 8, with regards to the truth, still continuing what's mentioned in verse number 7. لِيُحِقَّ الْحَقَّ وَيُبْطِلَ الْبَاطِلَ وَلَوْ كَرِهَ الْمُجْرِمُونَ, that He should establish the truth and abolish falsehood, even if the criminals disliked it. So whatever Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala decreed, it's decreed by the wisdom of Allah. For what? لِيُحِقَّ الْحَقَّ, for the haqq to be haqq. And that's an amazing statement, and that's why it's not very clear in the translation, because you see the translation, He should establish the truth. But in Arabic, لِيُحِقَّ الْحَقَّ, for the haqq to be haqq, for Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to make the haqq the haqq. And the haqq is the truth. So as you see clearly, that the haqq is already there. But what does it mean to make the haqq a haqq? That means to establish it, to make it very clear to the people. Because the haqq is what is basically is what's there. It's the reality of things. Al-batil, or falsehood, it is nothing. And that's what the difference between the haqq and the batil is. The batil is nothing, but it's the deception to the people. And the batil is something that is temporary. And the haqq is what stays. And that's what Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala would establish, the haqq, or the truth. So when we say, for example, batil or falsehood is if someone lies, for example, that means It does not exist. And the truth is al-haq, is the truth, is the truth. The same thing, the actions of the believers, if they claim that their actions is valid, it's not valid. It's actions of falsehood. So this is something that does not exist in the sense, it does not exist in the categories of the haqq. It exists in the categories of falsehood, which is nothing. Falsehood would lead to the hellfire. Falsehood would lead to evil things. But the haqq, the truth, that's what stays forever. And the truth will be established on the face of earth, and in the hereafter, it leads the people of the truth to enter the Jannah of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala لِيُحِقَّ الْحَقِّ, to establish the truth by what happened in the battle of Badr, that the believers, they intended one thing, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala intended something that would establish the truth clearly to the disbelievers and to the believers, that the power of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is over all things, and the disbelievers cannot do anything except by the permission of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, and the batil or the falsehood become very clear that it's falsehood, that it's defeated. وَيُبْطِلَ الْبَاطِلِ. And it's part of the duties of the believers to establish the truth and to eliminate the falsehood, and each according to their capacity and according to their authority. So each and every one upon their own selves, they need to be upon the truth, and they eliminate the falsehood from their own speech and actions and so on. And the same thing if a person is in charge of a household, and to raise the children and to have the household established upon the haqq, upon the truth, and not to be established upon falsehood, sins or innovations in the deen and so on. You establish a masjid, a place of worship, the masajid, for the haqq to be established, not innovations in the religion, not to oppose the way the Prophet ﷺ or to do things in the masjid that is not according to the way the Prophet ﷺ. That's batil, that's falsehood. And the same thing in everything in our life, in relationships, in speech, in actions, and so on. And with the battle of Badr, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala established the truth. The truth is there, but Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala established it clearly on the ground for the people to see the power of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala and the truth that the Prophet ﷺ is upon, and the companions radiallahu anhum. وَيُبْطِلَ الْبَاطِلِ. And for the batil, for the falsehood to be ruined, to be eliminated, to be treated as batil or falsehood. And that's another benefit that we need to learn. Part of the, what a believer should be upon, even if a person lives at times of weaknesses and oppression and so on, and the falsehood seems to be the superior one, right? But in the hearts of the believers, the batil is not superior. It might be physically looks like this, but it's nothing, it's falsehood. The truth, what needs for the person to hold fast to it. And that's why the Prophet ﷺ, when he said that لا يزال طائفة من أمتي ظاهرين على الحق, there are always going to be a group of my ummah apparent upon the truth. So they are upon the truth, and they will continue to be upon the truth, even if the majority are not. So that means the truth would never be eliminated on the face of earth. That's what the disbelievers, they intend. This is what they intended with the battle of Badr. That's why they want, this is what they come to the Prophet ﷺ to fight against him, not just to as a game or something like this, but to eliminate the haqq completely. And that would never happen till the Day of Judgment. Even if the believers, they get defeated, it's a temporary thing. But the haqq, the truth, will always be there, will be well established on the face of earth. لِيُحِقَّ الْحَقَّ وَيُبْطِلَ الْبَاطِلَ. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala would make the truth established, and He would make the falsehood. وَلَوْ كَرِهَ الْمُجْرِمُونَ. Even if the criminals, they dislike it. So what level of tranquility that brings to the hearts of the believers. So never fear other than Allah. The criminals, the evil ones, the disbelievers, they want all kinds of evil, and they take the means to spread what is evil. And they came from Mecca to fight against the Prophet ﷺ and to eliminate every single believer. And they thought that this was something that is very easy and it's going to happen and there's nobody can stop them. And Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, His will overpowers them. And what Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala decree goes through, even if it's against the criminals, even if in the entire humanity they get together to oppose the truth, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is above all. And everything happens by the will of Allah. Nobody can do anything without the will of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And if Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala will for something to happen, it's by the wisdom of Allah. Even if it's allowed for the disbelievers at certain times temporarily to think that the falsehood is well established on the land, this is by the permission of Allah, to test everyone, to test the believers. Are they going to be strong and steadfast upon the truth with their own actions and their speech and so on? And Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala will definitely change the situation when the people of the truth will hold fast to the truth. As Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala said, إِنَّ اللَّهَ لَا يُغَيِّرُ مَا بِقَوْمٍ حَتَّى يُغَيِّرُوا مَا بِأَنفُسِهِمْ. That Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala does not change the situation of the people till they change themselves. So Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is the one that establishes the truth, even if it's against the disbelievers. The same thing as Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala said, هو الذي أرسل رسوله بالهدى ودين الحق ليظهره على الدين كله. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is the one that sent the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam with guidance and ودين الحق, the deen, the religion of al-haq, the truth. ليظهره, to make it victorious, to make it apparent over all of the religions and all of the ways of life, even if the disbelievers, they hate it. So regardless, and that's why the will of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is over all things. And the believers, they worship Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So why should they fear other than Allah? Especially when the fear of other than Allah make them compromise their deen, make them disobey Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, thinking that this is a way to make the words of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala superior. There's no way. We can go to the levels of very detailed levels, even though this is the battle of Badr. But when a Muslim, because he is basically defeated within his own self, he's not proud of being a Muslim. He's not proud of the very basic and very detailed specific matters of the deen of Islam. For example, what's halal and what's haram, what's permissible and what's not permissible. It doesn't have to fit whatever people like or taste or so on and so forth. It's according to what Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala ordained for us. So if Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala forbade something for the believers, then the believers, they know that this is the truth. Other than that is falsehood. But what if falsehood is well established and the truth, people are not allowed even to be upon the truth? It's all temporary. Life is temporary. But it does not change the fact that the truth is the truth versus falsehood. So if entire humanity, they turn away from the truth and they don't establish the truth in one particular small, minute matter, does that change the fact that this is the truth and this is falsehood? It doesn't change anything. But that would never happen. That because of the hadith of the Prophet ﷺ, there always going to be a group of my ummah upon the truth. لا يضرهم من خالفهم أو خذلهم. That none, those who oppose them and those who let them down, would never harm them. حتى يأتي أمر الله, till the orders of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala comes. So therefore, this is a call for the believers to be upon the truth. And don't make your hold fasting to the truth. It depends on how the people in your community are. If they are upon the truth, sure, it's easy. But if they are not upon the truth and you know the truth, then we need to hold fast to the truth. We're talking about haqq and batil. We're living at times when people, they try to confuse this matter. There's no absolute truth versus absolute falsehood. The matter becomes all relative. What's truth to you is the truth to someone else, or the falsehood to someone else, and vice versa. No, it's not like this. There's an ultimate truth and there's ultimate falsehood. What is the criteria to know that? The revelation from Allah. Not our own desires, not our own taste to things, not according to our opinions, not from experience. It's the wahy from Allah, the revelation from Allah. The Quran, the words of Allah from the beginning to the end, is the truth. The sunnah, the authentic sunnah of the Prophet ﷺ is the truth. This is the truth. What's halal, what's haram, what's right, what's wrong, all of that, truth versus falsehood, and a person needs to be upon the truth. And one of the things that the Battle of Badr established this physically, after it's already been established in the revelation from Allah that the Prophet ﷺ is upon the truth, and the companions radiallahu anhum, and the disbelievers of Quraysh and others, they are upon falsehood. But it was established physically on the ground, as Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala said, لِيُحِقَّ الْحَقِّ, for the truth to be established, وَيُبْطِلَ الْبَاطِلَ, and for the falsehood to be also abolished, وَلَوْ كَرِهَ الْمُجْرِمُونَ, even if the criminals disliked it. It's such a powerful verse, and the verses, in Surah Al-Anfal and others, that give so much strength to the hearts of the believers. Give them tranquility and strength, and this is what is needed. Even, when in the Surah Al-Fath, may Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala give us the ability to talk about it, in the treaty of Al-Hudaybiyah, where the Prophet ﷺ was going through the treaty with the disbelievers, the Prophet ﷺ left Al-Medina with ihram, not intended to fight or anything, going to make umrah and to worship Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, and the disbelievers, they stopped them there. And it's a very interesting thing, and it's something that also Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala revealed Quran about it. But the point is that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, when the believers were prevented from this, the falsehood, the people upon the falsehood, they prevented them. So people would ask, why then the believers are not being victorious at that instant? And Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala willed for something else, that they would come after a year, and promised them then they would come after some time and they will be victorious and they would make their umrah and the great benefits as a result of this. But the point here that try to make here is that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala gave them tranquility then. And the word as-sakina was mentioned in that surah, Surah Al-Fath, and go see it 3 times out of 5 times in the entire Quran. So the same thing in the Battle of Badr. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala gave the believers this tranquility, this peace in them, facing their enemies because they're upon the truth. And that's what each and every one of us, we are in need of this. To be upon the truth and to establish the truth, to have that tranquility and the steadfastness to be upon the truth, which is Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala revealed to the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam. We'll go through that inshallah ta'ala and more with the next verses next time inshallah ta'ala with Surah Al-Anfal. So till next time, I ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to protect you all. Wa sallallahu wa sallam wa baraka ala Muhammadin wa ala alihi wa sahbihi wa sallam. Wassalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.
إلا الذين تابوا وأصلحوا وبينوا فأولئك أتوب عليهم وأنا التواب الرحيم.
فادعوا الله مخلصين له الدين ولو كره الكافرون.
يا زكريا إنا نبشر